people, welcome once again to H&M Clothings. Welcome to another beautiful tutorial. In today's video, we're going to be making this beautiful dress here. So this dress is a combination of a bustier. It has a yoke that's with mesh, and there's a flare at the bottom of the dress. The flare also has like mesh net on it. Okay, so if this is something you've been interested in seeing, please do keep on watching. By the way, I hope you saw this tutorial that we did in our last video. So I'm going to be using the remaining fabric to make this particular dress that we can see right on the screen. Yes. Okay, you know what to do. If you're yet to subscribe, please do subscribe, as well as do not forget to give me a huge thumbs up. It'll make YouTube push this video out so that more soulmates, more people will be able to see this video and be useful to them as well. Okay, so thank you so much. Let's dive right in. Alright guys, so we have our basic bodies. We have the front and back basic bodies pattern. We're going to be drafting the bustier as well as the yoke that we'll be needing for this dress. So let us begin. Okay, we are going to be starting with the front part of this bustier. Okay, by now, if you're used to my tutorials, you know these lines and what each of them mean. This is the chest line, bust line, and true bust line. So looking at this bustier, you can see that it's showing a little bit of cleavage just by the rise. Okay, so we are going to be we're going to be doing that as well. Okay, so that means that I'm going to be doing my sweetheart neckline to get to my bust line, or a little below it. To my bust line is fine, or just a little below it. Now to my bust line is fine. Okay, so we're going to be using this chest line as the guide for the part of the bustier. We'll use this chest line as the guide, but the part that has the sweetheart will curve to the bust line. Okay, then we'll be tightening the shoulder dart so that that bustier part will be held firmly, and yeah, that's all. So let's tighten the shoulder dart. To tighten the dart, we measure what we have here, 3 inches. I'm just going to be spreading it. I'll be doing double of what I have. Okay, then I'll draw a straight line. Great. So now that we have this, I'm going to also draw the cup part of the bust. You want to leave some excess there so that it sits nicely on the bust. Why I'm doing this is because, remember, this body has some ease, and we want everything to sit pretty. Okay, now that we have this is the line I'll be cutting on. I'm cutting on this line here, but for the sweetheart part, so this looks decent enough. This one is decent enough, right? And then you want to draw this line straight. You don't want it to follow the waist shaping that. Why we're making it straight is so that there won't be any excess fabric on that point. Okay, can then draw your lines. Yeah, so that's just it. And then I'll cut this out. Okay, so when we match up the lines, let's see if we'll have, okay, so here we can see that it's a little bit shorten. It's either you put fabric and put paper then to match it up. Let me put paper and then redraw. So yeah, I'm matching up the lines through bust, bust line. Then I can see here that there's a little bit of shortage, so I'll just put this there. Then I can then match up and then trim appropriately. Yeah, so you can see now that it matches nice and neat. Okay, so this is the front. Then for the yoke, I will be folding it on the original line. Okay, the yoke will be folded on the original dark line, not on the increase that we did. Okay, you also go ahead to cut your new neckline however deep or wide you want it to be. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, here as well you can see that this part also has a bit of shortage. You actually need to put paper, either you trim, let me just match it up, I'll just trim that part up. Yeah, great. And now let's measure out the neck. I'm going to be doing a 4.5 by 3.5 inches wide. And then you draw the neckline there. Okay. Then I'm cutting this out. And for the shoulder, I'm going to be trimming it out as well. So this is what the yoke will be. Let me label yoke. You're cutting this on fold. The front center, this is the center front. So front 1, and then front 2. Okay, remember when you're cutting to put seam allowance here, you need seam allowance here. You need seam allowance here at the inseams. So you can either put that on your pattern or on the fabric. Then you need seam allowance on the side seam as well. You need seam allowance up here to join this part to the yoke. Make sure you're having a seamless finish on the yoke. Okay. Okay, so now matching this up again, we can see that because of that tightening, this part isn't matching up. You actually need to put paper and fill it out. Okay, yeah, that's what you need to do. Okay, so I'm putting this paper there so that I can sort that part out. Okay, so what I'll be doing is going back to match up everything. Now you can use your tape, that's your paper tape, to actually hold this part together like it's sewn so that you can see the true picture. Like hold it together with the yoke, and then you can see here Now we have put the paper tape here to hold both the yoke, these two side seams, so that we can actually see the discrepancy here. See how it is. By the time you finish sewing this up and you attach your yoke, there will be a shortage in the armhole. So you actually want to now redraw your armhole. You want to redraw the armhole. Okay. When you redraw the armhole like so, then you can then measure out possibly 1 inch that you are going to be using for the allowance anyway. Just put it at once. Okay, I hope you are getting the gist and you can see exactly what I'm doing. All these things, if you do not take note of all these little things, especially when you're doing patterns, you will see that there will be ill-fitting, that you'll produce an ill-fitting garment. You would have done a great job, fantastic job, and then you now say that what's happening, this place is not sitting right, it's not looking good, it's not blah blah blah. These are the little things you need to pay attention to. So now we have just redrawn the armhole like we have a normal armhole there, and then I can then cut it. Then we'll trim here as well. Great. So this upper part now, I'll just snip it off. I actually extended the paper up there so that I can get the perfect part. Now you can see that this armhole is perfect. So that is it. Can I remove the yoke? And our front is ready to be cut. Let me just trim properly. Yeah, so our front is ready to be cut. I'll put my tape there to hold that part up there. Alright, great. Let us move over to the back. Okay, so for the back, all we need to do is actually cut this, like draw where you want the yoke to start from on the back. Okay, I'll be matching up these armholes so that I know where exactly this was cut, so that it can have the same start and finish, which is here. Then I will just draw a straight line there. If you want to do any form of design at the back should just be straight. I don't think you need any sweetheart or whatever. This shoulder dart, I'll just come and take it out from this side. My shoulder dart is about 0.5 inches. I'll just remove it from the side. Then for this back dart, I'll be extending it all the way up here so that I can cut that out. Yeah, so I'll label it. This is my zip part. So this is 1, 2, this is the back. Let me put it there so that I know. Then for this part, I also want to make sure the dart line is straight, like on a straight line, not slanted line. And this zipper part here should also be straight, not slanted, because we are joining it to the waistline. Don't forget to also put all your allowances by the time you'll be cutting it out. Okay, so this will be the 2 back bustier pieces. So I'll be putting allowances here, my seam allowance here, my seam allowance here, and my seam allowance on the side seam. Put seam allowance at the top, put seam allowance on the side, on this top as well. You can also put seam allowance at the bottom that you'll be using to join the flay. Okay, you can put seam allowances on your pattern before cutting on the fabric, but I will just do it directly on the fabric, so I'm not spending so much time putting seam allowances around the pattern. So I'm taking off this dark line here. It's now off. I also want to draw the neckline for the back yoke. Let me put it there so I know what it is. Especially when you are the pattern drafter and you have people that sew for you, you need to always label your patterns, okay? Then the next thing, remember we have a 3.5 inches wide neckline. I'm going to be doing 3.5 here as well, and I'll just bring it low to about 2 inches, which is fine. So we want, let's even put the front neck so you can see that it's 3.5, 3.5. You can see that there, right? So we want to match up these lines for the neck, and then we can cut it out, right? So amazing. Amazing. So this is what we have for the back. All our bustier pieces for the pattern is ready to be cut on the fabric, but before we cut, we need to cut out the flare first of all. After cutting the flare out, then we can now use the remaining fabric, because I have just about 3.5 yards. So you actually have to plan yourself well. If you go and cut out all, you know, all these parts are small pieces that definitely some parts of what will be left will cover up for this. But if you go and cut all of this, you use the good fabric, cut everything out, I'm sorry for your flare. You start joining. So I want to avoid that. That's why I'll be cutting the fabric first, the flare first. So let me keep all that patterns and let's move over to cutting our flare. Okay guys, so I have my fabric folded into two. Because the Ankara fabric is by 45 inches, it won't be possible to cut a full circle without joining at the bottom. So you can check the screen here to see the measurement for a half circle. I'm using a size 28 inches waist. I folded my fabric into two. Let me show you, let me explain how I did it. So for size 28 inches, a half circle is 8 inches, 7/8 inches. That's 7/8, which is just here. And then from that point, which is 7/8, I'm just measuring from that point down to get my 24 inches. Here I still have 1.5 inches extra. I can decide to move it up so that I do not waste fabric. So that's what I always do, okay, to avoid wasting fabric. So I'll just move it up. Now I'm sure it's going to be a perfect measurement. I'll have to fold it into a triangle. So once you fold it into two, you need to fold it into a triangle because we're cutting on the bias for the flare. So that's how you fold it to a triangle. Then we are going to be taking our measurements, smoothing everything out, which I'm doing. Smoothing it out. You want it to lay flat, okay? Smoothing all the sides. Great. Now that it is smoothing out, I can start taking my measurement. So for the upper one, the circumference here will be 7/8. So remember that when you're cutting on the bias, there'll still be a little bit of spreading. So it's left for you. Okay, that spreading can be used for your zipper allowance. Okay, because if you decide to do 9 inches round, girl, I bet you it's going to be super wide, wider than the 28 inches. You'll be getting like 31, 32 inches. So apply wisdom. From here, let's measure to the bottom. You can see what I have at the bottom. I have 24.5 inches, right, which is just perfect. So when I do the rolled hem at the bottom, it will now fall to 24 inches. Yeah, so from there I'll just measure 24.5. Okay, but if you want more allowance, do not fold it exactly at that measurement. So you want to be going round. Place your tape and keep pivoting so you have the exact measurement you need. I'm loving this fabric, man. This fabric is pretty. Where are the fabric sellers in the house? Come and sponsor your girl. So we'll cut now. Great, and then we can cut this upper part. Okay guys, so after cutting my circle, I did a half circle, not a full circle. So I used the half circle measurements that you can see on the screen. And let me explain what I mean by, if you have a size 28 inches, make sure you're using a smaller, maybe like 27 or 26 inches waist measurement, okay? But this one will still be fine because I'm going to use part of it for my zipper allowance. So let's measure around this circle and see what it is. So from this point, let's go round, 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 round. Can you see I have 31 inches? So from a size 28, I have 3 inches extra. So that means that I need to notch 1.5 inch on both sides to use as my zipper allowance. Thank God that it can be used as a zipper allowance. But if this was just like a, I don't know, just make sure you reduce the measurement if you want exactly what is there. That's exactly the waist. Okay, so that part now will take care of the zipper allowance. Okay, so our skirt is a half circle skirt. Use your full circle if you want to. So I'm keeping this away, and then we can now cut other pieces on the fabric. So this is the black net we'll be using for the flare on top and for the yoke. I'm just going to cut another half circle for the flare part of the dress. So I'm going to fold into 2 halves like this and then form a triangle with it. So there are like 3 layers of this flare because the lining too as well will be cut on a half circle. So at least it's going to be very full when we are done. Okay, so let's start measuring around this as well. So from here, I'll measure this one. I'm sure it will have more tendency to stretch more than the fabric. That's more than the Ankara, so I'll reduce it to 8.5 so that it doesn't stretch so much. And from there, I'll measure. It can be a little longer than the main Ankara. So I'll be measuring it longer. I'll be doing 27 inches round. Okay, so we have our net that we'll just be placing right on the flare. So let's place and see the magic. Oh, so pretty. Ooh, pretty, pretty, pretty. Wow, it's really pretty. Oh, so the next didn't really stretch as such. Okay. Yeah. I can trim it just a little. Okay, so that it fits the right way. I'll just trim it down a little. Let me do that. I'm just cutting off 1/2 inch. After this, please make sure you cut all the other pieces on fabric. Well, you see me cut them anyway. So let's see now. It's matching up. All these things there is always good. Always good you check it before sewing so that you don't get to lose, especially now that we're using a very lightweight flimsy fabric. So now you see that it's sitting really well on the waist. That 1/2 inch reduction helped a lot, and you can see that at the bottom it just jumps up a little. This is so lovely. I'm loving this already. So I'll keep the flare. Let's cut every other part of our garment.